Thank you for joining me in this playlist. I'm going to teach you some real in-depth strategies and skills about using analytics at the highest level. So it is not going to be a video or a playlist where you'll find some basic skills. I hope if you're watching this video, you're already experienced in digital marketing with 6 to 7 years, and what I'm going to teach you in this playlist is going to be something really in-depth and really of high standard. So let's jump in. And today, we would not talk about the implementation of analytics because I expect you to be aware of all these things, because these videos are for those people who are already experienced with 5-6 years of digital marketing experience. So I'm not going to speak about how to implement analytics on your side and what analytics does. So I'm going to take you a little deeper into the backend functionality, or we call it functional significance of analytics in the first level. Remember, analytics is a beautiful tool which is used to capture the user behavior. If you talk about user behavior, it is so important to people in different ways. If you talk about a businessman, he wants to understand his visitors or his customers' behavior so he can come up with a better product. If you talk about marketing manager, he needs to know the visitors' behavior so he can create better marketing campaigns. If you talk about operational manager, he needs to understand the visitors' information so he can come up with best customer experience. But remember, all of these people work in different departments, but all of these things, all of these people need one thing for sure, which is visitor information, because that is ultimately the most important thing that will decide whether your marketing campaigns will be successful or not. And Google Analytics chips right in here, right? And before getting into any of those other videos, remember, I want to share those 3 important pillars that you need to know before you start your journey about analytics. And these 3 important pillars on which the entire system of analytics is built is this. First one is called data collection. Second one is called data processing. Third one is called data reporting, right? So first thing is data collection. So we will begin our journey by learning about how data is collected. And once you understand how data is collected, we will then go to the second step, how data is processed and how data is reported. A lot of people think that Google Analytics expert just because they know to implement a code on the side, and the moment you put your code on the side, Google Analytics starts collecting the data and gives you report. And just because you have access to these reports, just because you're aware about these acquisition report, conversion reports or behavior reports, you don't become an expert. There are some very, very in-depth skills that you need to know, and that is when you can think of making a career. And the whole objective behind making this playlist is to give you those skills so you can learn these skills in real time and you can surely make a career. Right? So let's talk about the first thing, which is data collection. Remember, my friends, data is very important. And remember, data is only as good as you interpret. If you have data and you don't do anything with that data, it's of no use. So once you have data, you need to interpret the data. But the data interpretation can become easy when you know how data is collected. Let's talk about data collection, right? And the visitor tracking. See, data is collected by analytics the moment you place the Google Analytics tracking code. Right? It's a JavaScript code because the most used programming language on the web is JavaScript. Right? I hope you understand what is JavaScript. Let me give you one example or an analogy. Right? So if you have website, if you go to a website, remember, you can't directly go to a website unless you have a browser. So as a user, or if you're going to my website, which is makemarketer.com, remember, first you have to come to the browser, and in the browser's address bar you type in makemarketer.com. You know what happens, my friends, when you do this? You come to the browser is taking the request from you, that is called request. The browser collects the request from the user, takes that request to my server, which is my web server, which is called hosting, and goes and tells the server, I've got a request from a user. So browser responds to that request, this is called response, and the response will be in the form of a code because the hosting is full of code. Remember, your website is full of code. So when a user comes to the browser takes the request, goes to server, and server responds to that request. The server gives the request in the form of an HTML code. The HTML code, once it comes to my device, the browser starts interpreting the HTML command line by line, and that is how the website is constructed, and that is what you see in the GUI, graphical user interface. This is what happens in the backend. Now, if you want to know how analytics is getting to know about the visitor information, first thing is you have to place this code, right? And the code is placed on all pages. And whenever somebody visits a site, the page will load. And when the page will load, that code will carry the information to analytics server. This is called as a hit. A hit happens every time a page loads, right? And tracking in analytics is in 2 types. First one is a page view tracking that happens by default. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just put the code on the site. But if you talk about event tracking, It needs custom implementation. For example, if you want to track the behavior of the user on the site, for example, you want to track people clicking on buttons, or you want to track the number of people who scroll down to a certain extent on the site, or you want to track certain interactions. For that, you need to capture them as events. We will talk about these things in my future videos. But right now, I will restrict to data collection. Right now, as I'm talking about data collection, I also want to emphasize on one thing. A lot of people say visitors are tracked by analytics based on IP address. This is a myth. No, it cannot happen because IP address keeps changing. You want to try that, restart your router, you'll have a new IP address. Or sometimes you have an IP address and a lot of people might be connected to the same IP address. So if you say IP address is through which analytics will actually track the user, no, it is not happening, because again, I told you a lot of examples. 10 people connect to same IP address, so Google cannot interpret whether it's a 1 user or 10 user. So a lot of discrepancy, and this cannot work. And that is where the concept of cookies came into picture. So my emphasis will be on cookies here. Cookies is not those cookies. Cookies is a small text file which is dropped by the server to track the behavior of the user on any website. Remember, whenever you visit any website, maybe my website or Amazon website or any other website, remember those websites drop cookie on your browser, and that cookie will transfer the information about the user to the server. So analytics also works in the same way. When a user comes to my site, because I've placed the analytics code on my site, the page will load, and that page will send a hit to analytics server. And the hit is nothing but any interaction that happens, or any interaction that is, that's happening on my site, and that takes some information from my website to analytics server. And the hit can take a lot of information. Generally, hit takes information to analytics server in 3 ways. First is the page information. Second is the visitor information. Third one is the technology. If you talk about page information, it takes the page URL, page title, it will take the pages visited and the page load time and the page flow. But if you talk about visitor information, that goes to analytics with the hit, you have the visitor information which says the geolocation, the language, the browser operating system, the browser and the frequency and the recency and his interest and the gender and age. If you talk about technology, it mainly talks about the browser, the operating system, the device used and the version of those operating systems and all, right? So all these things are by default going from your website to analytics server. And once this data is collected, what analytics does is it checks if the user is already having a cookie. Right? If the cookie is not there, analytics will not be able to track the behavior of the user, neither it will be able to identify the visitor, right? And Google Analytics drops 3 cookies. The first one is called _GA, second one is called _GID, and third one is called _GTD, right? _GA is the actual cookie, or the centerpiece cookie we call it. This is used by Google to track the visitor. If somebody visits my site and the hit is passed, analytics will first check if the cookie is already there. If the cookie is already there, Google Analytics knows that this person is a returning visitor. Is not a new visitor, is a returning visitor. Why is a returning visitor? Because there is already a cookie. And what is stored in the cookie is a lot of information about the user. For example, somebody comes to my site and Google Analytics assigns a client ID. I will show you how client ID looks in the practical demonstration. So the cookie holds the client ID, and when the hit is passed, analytics is informed about the cookie information, which is the client ID. And when analytics sees the client ID, it knows it is not a new user, it is a returning user. For example, if you come to my site and you go through multiple pages and you have the client ID and all these hits are passed to analytics, analytics knows the same person is going to 5-6 pages. Now, let's take a scenario. If you come to my page, analytics is already there or cookie is already there, you already visited my site, you have a client ID, right? In the middle of the session, you happen to delete the cookie, right? Every time a hit is passed, analytics does these things repeatedly. It checks if the cookie is there. If a cookie is not there, it drops a new cookie and treats you as a new user and assigns a new client ID, right? So analytics tracks whether a visitor is new or old, or in fact, analytics tracks visitor based on client ID. I will show all these things in practical demonstration when you visit my site. Right? So visitors are not captured or not tracked by analytics based on IP address. It is rather tracked through cookies. But there are certain limitations for cookies as well. First limitation, cookies can be deleted by users. If you come to my site, a cookie is dropped and the client ID is there. And based on client ID only, Google Analytics tracks whether you are a new visitor or return visitor. Now, if you happen to delete a cookie and you come to my site, analytics will treat you as a new user. Why? Google Analytics cannot track you without cookie, right? Second one. right? Now cookie have duration, right? For example, there's some cookies which were dropped by server which can last up to 1 millisecond to many years, and Google Analytics cookie is going to stay for 24 months, which is like 2 years, right? And you talk about AdWords also, the cookie limitation is also there, which is for 90 days. We'll talk about these things in detail when you go to other videos. But remember, first, data collection is very important, and data collection happens through the code. So just because you put the code, it doesn't mean you're tracking everything. You have to track so many other information, and that will happen through cookies. Cookies are the one that is stored on your browser, and this cookie is read by analytics server, and that is how Google identifies whether you are a new visitor or a returning visitor. And I will show you the practical demonstration about all these cookies by visiting my site makemarketing.com, so you can see and troubleshoot. See my friends, these are the basics. Once I build this basic foundation, based on this, I can start building a tower of analytics on this. Thank you so much, and stay with me as I take you through the practical demonstration. And let's jump into the practical demonstration, right? So the moment user comes to my website, now remember, the user can access the website only when he has a browser. So browser is that intermediary thing or that vehicle that is taking the request from the user and is going to the corresponding web server of the website. Now this is my website makemarketing.com, and to access this website you first need to have a browser, and here I'm using a browser named Google Chrome, right? And so what happens is when a user comes and he says, I want to see this website, I want to access this website. So you ask the browser, hey browser, can you get me this website? So you type in the website name, irrespective if you're coming from any other source, but remember it's got to go through a browser, because browser is that vehicle that takes the request. So I am the user, so I'm typing in my website name and I requested the browser. Now browser got the request from the user. Now this browser goes and got the request response from the corresponding web server. So what happens is the moment you type in, browser takes the request from you, and it checks what URL you want, what path you want, and takes that and goes to corresponding web server. And the moment when I loaded the site, it actually happened in the backend, right? So the web server gives the request, and the web server gives the request in the files like the HTML file and the CSS JavaScript, and the browser starts interpreting that command by command, executing that line by line, and that's how the website is constructed. That is how you see the website. I will show you how this happened in real time. And the moment somebody comes to my website, I'm implementing Google Analytics. I'm already implemented the Google Analytics. You can go and see if Google Analytics is already there. Yes, Google Analytics is already there. Yes, it is there on my site. So Google Analytics is collecting the information. So I want to show you how that information is collected and what kind of data is sent from my website to Analytics server through these cookies. See, remember again, I repeat, cookie is a small text file that is dropped by my website on the user's browser. So I am the user here. So I will just show you what cookie is dropped, and Google Analytics tracks the user behavior based on cookie called GA cookie and GID cookie. I'm going to show you both of them, right? So now the user came to my site, the cookie is already dropped. So you want to see that cookie? Yeah. So before that, let's check. When people came to my site, the analytics got fired. Yes, it got triggered. So that means now analytics had the information that the user came to the site, and analytics tracks them by using those cookies, and I'm going to show you how those cookies look like. Now to see them, you can come to settings here. Once you come to settings here, you can scroll down to the bottom. You have something called site settings. Yeah, in site settings you have, see cookies and site data. You come here and then click on see all cookies, and you'll find all the cookies, right? So whichever site is implementing their tracking codes, the different third-party tracking codes, they all track the user behavior and identify those behaviors based on cookies. Now I want to see the cookies dropped by my website. Remember, cookies are dropped by my website because cookies are always per domain, and cookies dropped by one domain cannot be accessed by other domain, right? We will talk about how cookie information is shared, and that is when we talk about cross-domain tracking and subdomain tracking. I will take you through. Continue to watch, right? You see makemarketing.com. You see the GAID. This is the cookie that is used by Google. I repeat, this is the cookie that is used by Google to identify a user. Now, if user is identified by Google, only then it decides whether it's a new user or a returning user, because every time you load a page, Google Analytics cannot say he's a new user and start attributing all those page views to different sessions, right? Google Analytics has to stitch all those page views from single user into a single session, right? We'll talk about all those things in other videos, but remember, visitor is identified by analytics based on a cookie, and that name is GA cookie, and this is what you find in your browser because cookies are dropped on your browser, right? So let's see what is stored in this GA cookie. You see, this is called the cookie ID. right? Now there's also a name of the cookie, it's called cookie name, and in the cookie Google stores something called client ID. So Google recognizes a visitor or identifies a visitor based on client ID, and these two last numbers, you see, they are together called client ID. So client ID is this number and this number. This is the first string, this is the second string, random number and the timestamp, right? So basically this is made up of 4 parts. The first one is called GA1. GA1 talks about the version. So any analytics that is implemented on any website, they always have GA1 because that's a version that Google Analytics is using, right? Unless Google comes up with a version change, you might not find GA2 or GA3, but right now it is restricted to GA1. And you see the second one, which is called 2. That 2 represents that the cookie is dropped on the top level domain. Now see, when a cookie is dropped on the top level domain, what happens is that cookie information is shared across all the subdomains. Now if a cookie is dropped on a subdomain, example, if I have website called subdomain called apply.makemarketer.com. Now imagine the cookie is dropped at this subdomain, which is apply.makemarketer.com. So in that case, what happens is instead of 2 you would find 3, because that says the cookie is not stored on the top level domain, rather it is stored on the sub level. Now when the cookie is stored on sub level, what happens is the cookie information is not shared with any other sub level domains. The cookie information can only be shared across subdomains when the cookie is dropped on the top level domain. Here 2 represents the cookie is dropped on the top level domain, right? And Google Analytics always drops cookie on the top level domain. That is why you see makemarketer.com. This is the top level domain, right? That's why it says 2. Had it been apply.makemarketer.com, then it would have been 3. Now the third part here, that's called random number, right? Google assigns a random number, and the last one is called timestamp according to terminology of Google, and together the random number and the timestamp make it a client ID. Now you see the cookie is dropped, right? makemarketer.com, right? And the path is slash, because it is always dropped on that the first page, right? The path. And it always expires after 2 years. The expiration date for GA underscore cookie is 2 years. And what happens is, now imagine you come to my site, a cookie is dropped GA, and it has an expiration date of 2 years. So today is October 24th, and the expiration date would be 2 years, you know, after today, right? But this gets refreshed after every hit. Imagine you come after 1 month. That means the cookie will, adjust in dates for another 1 month extra, right? So it keeps on refreshing. So every time a new hit is received by analytics, it keeps extending the cookie expiration date, you know, by those many days. So ultimately it is the next 2 years. So if you come today, next 2 years. If you come in November, till next 2021 November. Now you see, today I came 23rd, it is going to expire on 21. If you come in December, it will be December 21. Why? It keeps extending the date based on the last refresh or last hit, right? And the second ID that cookie uses, used by analytics is GID, and this GID is used to track user behavior. This is used to identify the user. This is used to track the behavior of the user, right? What all pages he goes. And generally, now we are using universal analytics. If you go back into the past, analytics was using other 4 cookies, and the name of those cookies were this. I'll just show you. UTM underscore A, UTM underscore B. UTM underscore A, B, X and Z, they were used to track the behavior, and they used to store all this information, because if a user is coming and going to multiple pages, they all have to be attributed to same session, and that would happen based on UTM-B. UTM-B was the cookie that used to store this, and UTM-Z was used to store the last campaign source. For example, if you're coming to my website from Facebook, and next time when you come directly, it will remember, hey, you came last time from Facebook, and that information was stored in UTM-Z. But this is not in use anymore because it was in classic analytics. Now we are using universal analytics, and all these 4 cookies work is only done by GID, right? And GAT, it's generally for 1 minute, and the expiration time is only for 1 minute, because it's only to throttle the request. Why? What happens is, you don't want your website to send multiple requests to server and use all the resources of the server. So that's why they throttle the request. Remember, millions of people send requests, millions of page refresh. So again, they don't want to consume so much of resources. That's why they throttle the request, and that's only for 1 minute. And remember, this is for 2 years. GID is used to track the behavior of the user. That's only for 24 hours, and this for 1 minute. And remember, I want to highlight one point here. Google Ads remarketing, or for Google Analytics remarketing, Google does not use these cookies. Google uses a cookie called Doubleclick cookie. I will show you how that cookie looks, right? Alright, so let's come here. So what I'm doing is, I come to the site and then I open developer tools, Chrome developer tools. Now you open Chrome developer tools and you'll find something called this at the bottom, and you go to console, and in the console type in document.cookie. When you type in document.cookie here, it will capture all that information that is stored in the cookie. You see the other information, Crisp Chat is there, Facebook Pixel is there, GAC is there, and you can't exactly read this here, but remember all the information that is stored in the browser is here. We will have another way, and I will just show you how to look at that. So you go to network here, and when you go to network, what you can do is you can type in collect. You can type in the word collect. When you type in collect here and try refreshing the page again. Right. The moment you come to network here, you type in collect and refresh the page, you'll find something called collect. You type collect here, you go to headers, you'll find Google Analytics. Yeah, it's collecting the information. That means it's got a page hit, and with the page hit, it's taking so much of information. Let's come here, you just see. Whenever a hit is sent from website to analytics server, it carries 3 types of information: page information, visitor information, and technology. Page information is like page path, page URL, pages visited, host name. Visitor is geolocation, language, frequency, recency, gender, age, technology, operating system, device, model, and all those things, right? So let's come here. Let's see this again. Now you see all this information. This is the website name. This is the title. Now you find GID. You find something called GA as well, right? I will just show you how that actually looks. Now you can scroll down a little bit. You'll find all the information. Yeah, it says the scheme is HTTPS. Right? Remember, scheme is always called HTTP or HTTPS. Now, what information is taking? You see, the T is called the type of hit, which is page view. Right? DL is called document location, which is makemarketer.com. DT is called document title. This is the name of the title. The screen 24-bit screen resolution is this much. Language, user language is YN. So from each hit, Google is taking so much of information. It does not take so much of information about the page, it also takes information about the visitor, right? Now this is the client ID. Based on this client ID, I just showed you, remember in GA cookie, right? So the client ID is which, or using the client ID is how analytics track that is the same user. Now if you delete this cookie and come back to my site, this client ID will be renewed, or you will get a new client ID, and if you have a new client ID, Google Analytics will treat you as a new user. Remember, this client ID will not be shared with anyone else. Even if you delete the cookie and you come back, you will not get the same client ID. Remember, based on the client ID, Analytics tracks whether you are a new user or returning user, and every time you send a hit, this client ID is the one that will tell Analytics server this is the same user, and all those page views and hits that you send will be attributed to the same user using client ID. Remember, I want to show you again client ID. You go here, GA. You see client ID. To get the third and fourth part, will make client ID. You see 40265469. You come here 40265469. This is the client ID, right? And all the other tags. Now there's another way. You can even go to applications. When you go to applications, you have something called cookies. You click on cookies here, and when you click on cookies drop down, you'll have the website. You click on website, you'll find all the cookies that are there on this website. You see these are all the cookies. Now you want to go and see _GA. Let's see where is underscore and GA. Yeah, you see this? Now this is the client ID. No, this is for Crisp Chat. Where is my site? This is Make Marketer. You see GA, this is the 40265469. You see GID is also there, right? And there's another way. If you want to still do this, what you can do is there's something called GA Debugger, and GA Debugger is an essential tool if in case you are trying to troubleshoot something. Now it's not showing up, but it will show up, right? I have to refresh the page, and then this will work. Now if I go to an extension called Edit This Cookie, I have added extension called Edit This Cookie, and the moment you add it here and refresh the page, you will find it in the Chrome developer tools. You click here, you will find GA. You see this? And Edit This Cookie is an extension in case you want to change the information of the cookie, change the name of the cookie. You can do that, but it's never recommended to change anything with G_G or the client ID, because Google will not be able to track if you're a new user or returning user, right? And if you do anything to this, all the data will be corrupted. You will not be able to track whether returning users are there or new users are there, right? And it can even affect bounce rate if you happen to change it, because if a user comes and you change it and again it sends a new hit with new client ID, Google Analytics treats them a user, right? So GA underscore GA. Now don't do this. In case if we talk about something more advanced, how to edit a cookie or how to create our own cookie which stores some information and we can use that as a trigger in GTMs, we will talk about that in future videos. But right now there's something called edit this cookie, and if you want to do more research on this, you can go and read some content on edit this cookie. Thank you so much. And this is how the content is sent, the data is sent from my website using cookies to analytics server. It's a cookie that is dropped by my website. And that cookie is G underscore cookie, and it's always dropped on per domain basis, and analytics has the access and analytics reads the information, and that is how they track. Remember, analytics tracks user based on the client ID, and this is how you can see all these things, right? Thank you so much, and continue to watch the other videos in my playlist. Do not jump. Please make sure that you watch it completely. This is not a simple playlist. This is something very special, something beyond, and something that is not covered in any other videos, right? And I bet by the time you finish this, you'll become a champion at using analytics. Thank you so much, and stay connected to my channel. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't watched it. And if you like the video, please share it as well, and I will see you with the other video. Thank you.